Hey everybody, Nick Coffey, candidate for Oklahoma Attorney General here. So look, the number one question I'm getting in the wake of the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy is, what happens now? Can those ICE agents involved in the shootings be prosecuted? And the short answer is yes, but there are some legal hurdles to jump through. First, the federal government could of course investigate and prosecute these ICE agents, but for reasons I don't have to explain, that's obviously pretty unlikely. So next question, what about state charges? Theoretically, yes. Here's the deal. Federal officers performing federal functions generally cannot be prosecuted by states for actions taken with the scope of their federal authority. This rule exists to prevent states from interfering with federal functions. And this makes sense. Think back to the Civil Rights Movement and the Freedom Riders. 1961, President Kennedy sends the U.S. Marshals to Alabama to ensure the protesters' safety. Alabama couldn't then just turn around and prosecute the U.S. Marshals for being there while they're protecting protesters, exercising their civil rights. So let's play this out. Let's assume that the Minneapolis district attorney charges the ICE agents with some state crimes there in Minneapolis, okay? So if that happens, the ICE officers are going to remove the case to federal court, where a federal judge is going to decide if the ICE officers are actually immune from prosecution. So the federal judge would ask, were the ICE officers acting within the course of their official duties, one, and then two, were the challenge actions necessary and proper to fulfill or carry out those official duties? And to be clear, most of the litigation concerns this second question, right? So was the challenge action here, the shooting of Renee Good and or Alex Preddy, necessary and proper to carry out the federal operation? So for the action to be justified, the agent himself must have subjectively believed at the time of the shooting that the action was justified. And secondly, relatedly, it must have been objectively reasonable for the agent to have thought that at the time. And in deciding this, the federal judge is going to consider several factors and ask several questions. So for example, he's going to ask himself, what does it look like here the agent acted with personal animus, like there was a bad motive? Does it look like the use of force was excessive or reckless? Does it look like, this deviated from ICE training? Was there an imminent threat? These are all things that the judge is going to consider when deciding whether the action was necessary and proper. And in doing all this, if he decides, yes, the action was necessary and proper, then the suit dies in federal court. But if not, if he says the action was not necessary and proper, goes back to state court and the criminal case proceeds, and there the agents aren't going to be able to claim some type of federal immunity, either in court there, in a pretrial hearing with the judge, or later on in front of a jury at trial. So in closing, I want to leave you with three thoughts. One, yeah, there are a lot of hoops to jump through, but federal officers don't just get to flout state law with impunity, like some have actually suggested. Second, the federal judge is going to be able to consider whatever evidence he wants in deciding the original, the immunity question there, the threshold question in federal court. But the problem is right now, there are reports that the federal government is blocking state investigators from gathering evidence at the scene, right? That would limit the amount of evidence there is for the federal judge to consider. This is highly unusual. I don't recall any instance in my days as a federal prosecutor where I routinely worked with investigations with state authorities that federal and state authorities were not sharing evidence, or that federal authorities, my agents, were blocking the state from getting evidence. Third, I don't care what side of the political divide you're on. I challenge you to name the last time there were two fatal shootings by federal agents of American civilians in the same city over the course of 2-ish weeks. And this isn't even counting the non-fatal shootings that occurred in Oregon in the intervening time between, Renee Good and Alex Preddy's deaths. The point is that this is unprecedented. It is not normal, and we should not grow somehow oblivious to that. And it's not the type of transparency and accountability that we expect and deserve from our government. And so I come to you with a challenge, and I don't come to you as a candidate for Oklahoma Attorney General. I come to you just as an American. Months from now, on November 3rd, when Americans go to the polls, most people will have forgotten about this. This event will be out of their minds. But I challenge you not to forget, because I guarantee you the families of Renee Good and Alex Preddy aren't going to forget, and neither should you.